Okay, welcome and good afternoon, everyone. Very pleased to have you here. I'm Halsey Cook, the President and CEO of Milliken and Company, and I'm going to read a short prepared statement and then we'll open it up to questions. And I'm joined by your expert panel of esteemed colleagues of mine, and I'll go from your right to left in introductions. And first is Cindy Boyder, the president of Milliken's chemical business. Then Deidre Sandrock, director of sustainability and innovation for our chemical business. And finally, on the end, we have Wim van de Velde, global vice president of plastic additives. So pleased to have you here today, and just wanted to share with you some more details around the net zero commitment and announcement that we're making today. Milliken is a diversified global manufacturer in the textile, chemical, healthcare, and floor covering industries with 157 years of expertise in research, design, and manufacturing. Our work at Milliken is often behind the scenes of the products that you might experience, with deep research in our labs and a lot of work on our production floors to make things possible. Thanks to our 8,000 associates globally and a tradition of excellence across 15 countries, we are a leader in the segments that we serve. Our team comes to work every day with curious minds and an unwavering commitment to deliver sustainable innovations for our customers and the communities in which we operate. And around the globe, we rally behind a common purpose, which is simply to work as a team to positively impact the world in the present and for future generations. Today, we further that purpose by announcing that we will become a carbon net zero company by the year 2050. We'll do this by reducing the direct and indirect emissions of our company, otherwise known as Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. And so there is no doubt about our definition. I'll read them to you. Scope 1 is all direct emissions, including fuel consumption on our sites, such as gas boilers and fleet vehicles. Scope 2, all indirect emissions from the generation of electricity we purchase and in our operations. And Scope 3, all other indirect emissions from activities within the organization occurring from sources that we do not control, including the carbon inherent in the materials we are purchasing from our suppliers. There's been some confusion and, frankly, some skepticism about net zero announcements by companies in the press lately. So I don't want there to be any doubt in your mind that today our news is both that we have committed to net zero by 2050 and we have adopted the most trusted and authentic path possible to validate a net zero plan. Our net zero targets have been formally approved by the Science Based Targets Initiative, SBTI for short. SBTI is a nonprofit collective of international organizations dedicated to helping companies set emission reduction targets in line with the best climate science and the Paris Climate Agreement. As we began to consider making our net zero commitment, we realized that not all net zero targets or commitments are created equal. We learned what to look for, and we set our targets to achieve emissions reductions that are consistent with the pathways science tells us will limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Simply put, we've committed to reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions across the value chain by 2050 from a 2018 base year. So let me kind of break that down a little bit and say, in the near term, we've committed to reducing absolute Scope 1 and Scope 2 greenhouse gas emissions 50.4% by 2030 and reducing absolute Scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions by 30% by 2030. As you know, 2030 is around the corner, only 7 years from now. So we are already hard at work in our plans to achieve these reductions. We have and will continue to make real measurable strides towards decarbonization, and we will add our voice to the many requests for greener energy and raw materials produced with less carbon to pull forward schedules for meaningful solutions. And we'll share our progress as we go. For example, since 2018, we have exited coal as a fuel source and invested in a state-of-the-art cogeneration facility, both of which have significantly reduced our Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions already. We are also focused on upgrading systems to provide emissions reduction insights, integrating carbon impacts into investment considerations, strategizing on decarbonized electricity options with our utilities, and continuing to reduce our natural gas consumption in our operations. For Scope 3, our priorities include increased collaboration with our suppliers to increase transparency and uncover emissions reduction opportunities, improvements in our product analysis, and also continued innovation for all product end-of-life solutions and considerations. For our longer-term work, by 2050, SBTi has also approved our targets, reducing absolute Scope 1 and Scope 2 greenhouse gases by 90% by 2050 from 2018 base year, and reducing absolute Scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions by 90% within the same time frame. Our 2050 targets are ambitious, and we are committed to making them. If you ask us today how we'll get there, the answer is simply we don't have all the answers yet or all the details yet. We're still in the process of creating a clear and actionable plan as we've set out for our 2030 goals. What we do know is that innovation will be key, and we will not be able to succeed in isolation. There are technologies that are in the process of coming to market or being invented that will enable Milliken and the world to be successful. And by putting our voices together, we can create the demand to fuel these technologies and be successful. We are going to continue to invest in innovation so that we can avoid the worst effects of climate change for ourselves and for humankind. As we go, we will measure, monitor, and report on our progress and share our learnings. We will be transparent and supportive of others who are also on this journey. As Milliken Associates, we are proud of our company that we can help lead this work. We're among the first 50 companies in the world to achieve SBTi approval net zero. And we are the first company in South Carolina, which is where our headquarters is located, to have achieved the SBTi approval. We are not newcomers to the sustainability discussion. Our net zero commitment is the culmination of a long history of actions and proactive efforts that we've taken for over a century. Our stakeholders, including the company's owners, our board of directors, all of our associates, and our customers stand with us on this journey. So at Milliken, we are on this journey together, and we invite others to join us. For a deeper dive into this work, I invite you to join us tomorrow, where we will have a tech talk with our own Deidre Sandrock and our Milliken colleague who's in the back of the room, Scott Trenner, at 2 p.m. in Hall 6, Gallery 1005. And please be sure to leave with one of these cards, which will connect you to our full press kit and position paper so that you can learn more about our work. And I'll also point out that in Hall A271, we have our full booth, and we'd love to have all those products which demonstrate the ability to actually reduce carbon footprint in our products and the partnerships we have in many different parts of the value chain, and give you very specific examples of how we are making these carbon reductions a reality today. So with that, I'll conclude my statement and open it up for questions.
Could you perhaps talk about how you build what you've just been talking about into these expansion projects?
I'll say simply that as we consider all acquisitions, we consider that first with the lens of how this acquisition will move us forward on our sustainability journey, and certainly ZebraChem is a great example of that. And so I'll pass that to my colleagues to answer in more detail. And the same is true of capital. And we've moved from not really looking at our sustainability capital as a separate part of the discussion to a position where basically all of our capital is now examined with the lens of sustainability and what it will bring to these targets that we've set, which are very ambitious and are going to require a lot of investments to get there. So I think either Wim or Deidre.
Yeah, I can make a couple of comments. So, for example, I'll give you the example of the ZebraChem acquisition we did roughly a year ago. Well, the whole purpose actually of that acquisition is to advance circularity and mechanical recycling. We have actually technologies which work together, which comes from the Milliken legacy, right, side, which are in combination with the ZebraChem side, allow actually mechanical recyclers to actually put their products in more different applications. So in that sense, it advances actually the progress actually Halsey was talking about. Deidre, you want to add any comments here?
Yeah, thanks, Wim. So when we think about net zero and our net zero ambitions as a company, it's both because we want to reduce our internal carbon footprint, but also the impact that we have on the greater decarbonization efforts as well. So when we look at the expansion that we've had at our DB facility, our clarifier technologies that are produced there provide a significant amount of carbon reduction in their downstream use. The technologies that Wim talked about at our ZebraChem facility aid in circularity. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation says that nearly half of the decarbonization that's going to be required is going to come from circularity technology. So our emphasis around that is both focused on internal and external. But Halsey mentioned it in one of our priorities, is really making sure that we include carbon and sustainability with real financial attribution in our capital investment decisions. And so as we move forward, when we look at investments like this, it's certainly going to be a serious item that's taken into consideration when we make our investment decisions.
So yeah, the value to the customer, right? If you think about the value chain and what they're doing, we're enabling their sustainability initiatives, right? And with net zero, as they go back to, we become their scope 3, et cetera, et cetera. So we're helping all the way through the value chain as we go through net zero.
I think I'll just add to that if I may, we've been on this journey the last 4 years. We started a strategic plan. We identified our purpose statement. We reinforced it with the values that we wanted to make sure that we lived as a company. And one of those core values was sustainability and also innovation. And so tying those two things together, what we've seen over time is that it has really become the core of everything that we're working on. And it's been a powerful unlock inside the company. And concurrently, we've really witnessed in our end markets a sea change where sustainability, decarbonization, circularity are becoming and will become, we're convinced, the very basis of competition in the future. And so we were trying to do this to do the right thing. Our associates believe in it. We find people are attracted to our company. And it's turned into something much bigger. And so when it came time to set the goal for 2050, we felt we really needed to handle it in the very best and most science-based, authentic, verified way possible. And that's really what the news is about today. So I think it's not only important to our customers. You'll see on the website, some marquee customers. Michelin is a customer. We make airbags for all the tier 1 automotive companies, many petrochem companies, branded companies like Procter & Gamble. the conversation in the last couple of years has moved from nice to have to we want you to be specific, and it's how we're going to decide whether or not you will be a valued supplier for the future. And as we turn around and look at our supply base, we will be selecting people on the same criteria in the future. So it is and is going to change business profoundly.
You mentioned earlier about companies are making statements about being commitments as far as SBTI commitments. So what's the difference between a commitment versus the net zero standards that we're talking about today?
SBTI is a great initiative, and it's helping people align their business goals and sustainability aspirations. It's been around since 2015, and so as we all know, sustainability standards continue to evolve. And so the SBTI commitments that came by way of 2015 up to now have not necessarily had the rigorous standards that the net zero standard has brought this year. So two things. The first, the net zero standard is inclusive of all emissions. It includes both near and long-term targets. They're third-party verified and require transparency in reporting. In the net zero standard, you have a stepwise process where you go from making a commitment to having your targets submitted, and then ultimately you get to a validated or approved target. And once that happens, you have 6 months to publicly announce. So we actually are here today. We're further down in that process. We applaud everybody who's made commitments to the net zero standard, and we will encourage and help them along their way in the best that we can to be able to help as many people as possible cross that journey. But a commitment is at the beginning of the process, and so we're very proud to be where we are as having moved through the process. I think there's about 1,500 or more companies at this point who've stepped up and made that commitment, but the list of companies who've crossed that approval threshold is significantly lower at this point, and we hope that others will join us and cross that threshold in the months and years to come.
And the process was great for us as a company. We thought we knew that our application was rock solid, and in fact, there was a lot of back and forth, and we learned a lot from them in terms of the way we're thinking about sustainability. So creating a standard and a level playing field on how companies are evaluated around this subject, which has a ton of variation in it, and people sense that people are making environmental commitments, but they're not sure whether or not it's something you can validate, and whether or not it's the total scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. There's an awful lot of companies that are only focusing on scope 1 and 2, which is the energy they buy and the emissions they create in their own operations. And they're saying, I can't really do anything about my suppliers. That's up to them. This is a total package of what you have to do to get to 2050, and it benefited us a lot to go through this.